Hey guys, welcome to my channel. My name is Ola Diamonds. I'm called The Strategist. So in this video, we'll be talking about the top 10 common interview questions and answers for a business analyst. You want to land a job as a business analyst? Maybe you're just building your career and you've gone for several interviews and you failed at many of the questions. Today, we'll be talking about these 10 questions and the kind of answers that you give. Let me teach you something. What you're seeing here is actually based on the fact that I've interviewed business analysts in their hundreds. I have mentors, coaches, friends, colleagues all over the places who have also done the same thing likewise. So what we try to do is that we try to put all these things together. There are a long list of them. We are starting with this particular part 1 to talk about the top 10 that you need to get yourself familiar with. And when you're going through them, keep this thing in mind. You will see that every answer that you see as a response to the question talks about the context, right, of the business analyst, the action taken by the business analyst and the result gotten by the business analyst. You hear? And I talk about it in the CAR context, that is CAR context. It's similar to what you see today that people talk about out there, which is the STAR method. It's 100% similar to each other. Like in any way you respond to it, you exactly provided the same thing. It's about the same thinking process. What context did you find yourself? What was the situation you find yourself? What action did you take? And what was the result that you achieved? So we'll be talking about that. But remember, if you want to keep this in mind, what are the top 10 things that BA does today? There's a video I did on that. You can still go back to that video and watch that particular video, right? These are the top 10 roles today that are being performed by business analysts all over the world. Anywhere they find themselves in any kind of industry, these are the top 10 roles today that are being done by business analysts. Some spend more time on some areas, some spend more time in other areas. At the end of the day, this is what business analysts actually do today. So just look at them, pay attention to them, and let's go straight to the question. I'm sure you can't wait, right? So let's take it. Number one question is, you might just get to an interview and somebody asks you a question. What roles have you performed as a business analyst? That's a question. And in this case, people are trying to understand from you. They want to know exactly the kind of the thing that you have done before. What kind of answer do you want to give? And I will just read them out to you and explain them. So you can give them an answer by saying, as a business analyst, I've played a crucial role in identifying needs and translating them into technical requirements for effective project execution. For example, I collaborated with stakeholders, analyzed and processed and proposed solutions to enhance business operation. This is the way you define that. And you can give some scenario kind of responses. You could say, in my previous role, for example, as a business analyst at People Amp, I was tasked with improving the order fulfillment process of the complaint. By conducting interviews with stakeholders, I observed the existing process. I spent my time to analyze the data. Then when I look at this data, I saw some trend and insight. Then I was able to identify bottlenecks in that. Then I proposed a new automated workflow that reduced processing time by 40%. It resulted in a quicker order deliveries and improved customer satisfaction. If you look at this, let me explain to you. The context was what I've tried to explain. I was tasked with improving the order fulfillment process. I've given the context right away. Now, what is the action, which is the A? Remember I talked about the CAR, right? The A is that I conducted interview with stakeholders, I observed the system process, and I analyzed data, then I identified bottlenecks, then I proposed, which is what I gave as the solution, right? And the result is that it resulted in 40% quick order deliveries and improved customer satisfaction. Another example you can give here is, for example, I work in a retail company and I recognize a need to optimize the inventory management process by working closely with store managers, finance analysts, and other business leaders. Here, you are trying to talk about the point that you are able to work with stakeholders, analyze sales trend and stock level. Based on this analysis, I proposed a new automated replenishment system that reduced stock out by 25%. Overall, I enhanced the sales of the company. You could see these are the ways to give answer to the question. In that way, you have shown yourself to be a professional business analyst. Now, number 2 question here is this. What methodologies have you worked with as a business analyst? This one is just trying to test yourself on how you understand different frameworks, right? For example, in agile, most times in an environment, they also want to understand whether you have an understanding of the waterfall kind of a framework. That is the reason behind this kind of question. So this is an example of an answer that you give. You could say, I have an experience in agile, in waterfall, and also in the hybrid methodologies. Recently, I've been working in the Scrum framework where I engage with the development team in sprint planning, in sprint review, and retrospective meetings. I've also had some experience with using Kanban board. You could see I've tried to mix them up together to show that, okay, these are some of the examples of what I've been able to do. These are the scenario responses that you give. Example, you will say, in a software development project I worked on, I used Agile. I collaborated with the development team to deliver what we call the MVP. We are trying to use some technical terms within the first 4 sprints, technical terms again of Agile. This approach allowed us to receive early feedback from users and incorporate changes in subsequent sprints. It resulted in a highly responsive and user-focused application. That answer is spot-on answer. They will know that this person is good enough. And it's not left for you to now rephrase this the way you want to do it, but sit down with it, understand it, and put yourself out. The second response to that is, you could say, in a recent project, which we use agile methodology to develop a mobile application for a client, you collaborated closely with the development team, you work with stakeholders, and how did you do it? You conducted bi-weekly sprint reviews, and you adjusted requirements based on their feedback, and you use the Kanban board to drive daily stand-up meeting. You conduct a retrospective at the end of each sprint, and the learning that you use was subsequently used for the next sprint. If you can do this, for example, is a very good answer that you give to this kind of question. Yeah, you could see this is very interesting. So now it's getting deeper. Number 3 question: how have you been able to gather requirements from stakeholders? What method have you used? You could see they want to know, how did you do that job of stakeholder management? How did you, or were you also able to elicit requirements from stakeholder? What method have you used? This is what you're trying to test here. Example answer that you give here is that I've employed a combination of techniques to gather comprehensive requirements. For example, I conducted one-to-one interviews. In some cases, I organized some mini workshops. Then I used surveys. I used that like online survey. I used different tools. I used the Google form to be able to take input from the people, keeping that confidentiality. Then I thoroughly analyze existing documentation to ensure that I have an understanding of what the user needs, and also the problem and the opportunity. This is what and the approach in which I've taken. For example, you were working on a CRM anonymous improvement project. You conducted stakeholders with interviews to gather users' preferences. You also facilitated a workshop where different departments shared their pain points and expectations. By combining this insight together, you defined a set of requirements that align with the needs of all stakeholders. You presented this requirement in order to validate needs. These are the kind of examples that you give to those kind of questions. Second scenario response that you can give to that, you could say, in an hospital system project in which I worked on, we were trying to optimize the patient flow because there was an issue with the queuing system and delay of patients in the hospital. I spent time shadowing nurses and doctors during their daily routine, and this hands-on approach enabled me to identify workflow inefficiencies that were not apparent through discussions that we got alone. Here, we are trying to identify that you don't just take data, you can also take data by observing. That is what you are trying to show here. As a result, the redesigned system significantly improved patient care and staff productivity. You could see that this is very fantastic, right? You're trying to be real and try to give real life example to a technical kind of questions. And while you're giving that example, you're trying to explain and try to use some words that are BA technical jargons that are very much important, that shows that you have done this work before. If you can master them, you get used to them, then you will ace your interview. Number 4, what is the difference between use case and user story? This question, interestingly, many BAs out there, they fail at this question most times when I ask them at an interview. In fact, more than half, close to half of the BA, maybe you might not be able to explain it very well, but here comes the answer to that. A use case, for example, captures interaction between the actors in a system and the system itself, while a user story actually focuses on the single user requirement. Usually, we use that in an agile kind of project. Let me explain further. So what are the scenario responses you can give? Because this kind of question, you want to give them an example to show that you have an understanding of what you are saying. For example, you say, when I was working on an e-commerce project, for an online retail store, a use case, for example, is the steps that a customer take to place an order. That is a use case, including how the customer interacted with the shopping cart. That, for example, is a use case, right? With logging in with the payment gateway, right? That is example of a use case. However, a user story could be, as a shopper, I want to view product reviews to make an informed purchase decision. That, for example, is a user story. Let's go to scenario 2. While I was working on a banking application, for example, a use case could depict the steps that the customer takes to transfer fund. You go to your banking application, the steps you take to transfer fund is a use case. On the other hand, a user story is, as a customer, I want to be able to transfer fund between my account quickly to manage my finances more efficiently. These are the responses you give to this kind of question. I'm sure you're enjoying this. You know what you do for me? Please click that like button, click that subscribe button, right? And also to encourage me more, right? You know what to do? Hit that bell so that you don't miss out on subsequent information. It's getting interesting, right? Let's go to number 5. Number 5 question is, can you discuss a challenging situation where you have had to manage conflicting stakeholders' priority? This happens to people in the course of their project, yeah? Sometimes you're trying to execute a project and you realize that there are many stakeholders. Stakeholder A wants something else, stakeholder B wants something else, and two of them just want to stay on their ground. And how do you manage them? And you don't have all the resources to manage them. So let me give you a typical answer to that, yeah? And you can pause anytime and try to create your own kind of an answer and compare your answer to my kind of answer. So an example of an answer to that is, during a project where we're trying to implement a new inventory management system, different departments, they had conflicting priorities. To address this, what did I do? I organized a series of workshops to create a shared understanding of the objectives. By involving all the stakeholders in the decision-making process, we were able to prioritize requirements based on critical business needs, and we created an alignment. You could see, you gave a context, you talked about the action you took, and you stated very clearly the result that you achieved. Now, 2 examples of responses to that. You could say, in the retail project which I managed, the sales team wanted real-time inventory updates, while the finance team wanted to, they want to cut costs. You see, there's a battle between real-time inventory update and finance team also, they want to emphasize cost savings. Through collaborative discussions and a focus on data-driven insight, I balanced this priority and proposed a solution that provided timely updates without compromising on cost efficiency. That is a lovely and perfect answer for this kind of question. The second scenario response to this is, during a project to redesign an HR system, different departments had various requirements. Now, for example, there was a requirement that the finance wanted, there was a requirement that HR wanted, the requirement that the business leaders wanted. So what I did was that by organizing a requirement prioritization workshop, you see, what you did was that you organize a requirement priority kind of a workshop, right, where you use scoring to objectively assess each requirement, impact, and their urgency. You were able to result in a clear priority order, and every stakeholder at the end of the day, they were very happy. So you could see how you manage all this kind of conversation and how you give an answer to a question. So you don't give a program answer, right? When somebody asks you a question, what do? You find a way to make sure that you give a kind of answer that shows that I understand this very well. Let's go to question number 6. How do you ensure that the developed solution meet business requirements? For example, you've worked on different projects before. So how did you confirm that they met business requirements? They want to test you on some technicalities. There are some words that you must be able to use for this kind of question. And if you see similar questions like this, there are some things that you must be able to say. Let's go straight to the answer. So some of the answers you can give here is, I conducted user acceptance testing, UAT, and I created traceability matrix where stakeholders validate the solution against agreed upon criteria. Before this time, some prototypes were presented to the stakeholder during the demo to get their feedback and adjust accordingly. You could see there are many business analyst jargons here, and I have a video where I will talk about some common use like jargons by business analysts. An example here is user acceptance testing. Example is traceability metrics. Example here is acceptance criteria. Example here is a prototype, and that part where you try to get feedback from the customer. If you put this thing together, guess what? You are not giving an answer. You are also displaying your competence and your understanding of the context of business analysis. Let's go straight to scenario responses, right? For the same kind of question, yeah? So you say, for example, in a finance software project I was working on, I collaborated with the end user to create UAT scenarios, that is user acceptance testing scenario. You could use it in abbreviation, then you explain what it means to them. And say these scenarios covered critical financial processes, ensuring that the software handled complex calculations accurately, successfully UAT confirmed that the solutions aligned with business need. Can you see? This is so fantastic. It's a very lovely response, technical. You're putting your finance understanding into this, right away. And by the way, you could craft this for the kind of industry in which you have worked in, or the kind of industry that you want to work in. It could be in finance, it could be in manufacturing, it could be in supply chain, it could be in retail, any kind of industry. Let's go to the second one. So in a software development project, I created a traceability matrix that detailed each requirement, its acceptance criteria, and the corresponding test cases. This allowed the QA team to systematically validate the solution, ensuring that it met all outlined requirements. Here now, for example, you're not talking about only having UAT, you're not just talking about having the traceability matrix, you also brought in another resource here, which is the QA or the software tester, or whoever the person might be, right, to now do validation of the product. These are the ways in which you show yourself to be a very, very good BA. You see, we have 4 more to go, yeah? And I'm sure you're enjoying this. You know what to do once again? You know, right? Click that button, click that subscribe, and don't forget to hit that bell, right? Let's go straight to number 7. So number 7 question is, how do you handle changing requirements during a project? This kind of question is trying to test your agile mindset, because agile is very much open to change. From agile, we reiterate a lot. We come back and take feedback from the customer, then we update and do something more differently next time, something better to the customer. We try to offer value more frequently to the customer. So how do you answer this kind of question? Yeah. So you give an example to that. This one, you need to give a real life scenario into that too, the same way. So for example, I adopt a flexible approach, by collaborating with stakeholders to assess the impact of changes. Here, you could also bring in some things in. You then communicate adjustment to teams promptly to ensure smooth transition. Oftentimes, this happens after the sprint demo or a show and tell session. You need to tell them and say, you know what I do? I actually plan my demo session whereby I show the solution to the customer gives me an input and a feedback, and I use that to feed into my project, then I update it better. Now, what are the scenario responses? In an e-commerce project in which I was working on, the marketing team requested an additional feature late in the development phase. You see, you are trying to say you were actually in a tight situation here. Then I organized a quick impact analysis. You see, that's another word, impact analysis, to understand the effect on the timeline and resources, because it's not just you taking a change and accepting a change. You also need to understand that what is the impact of this on overall. So don't just go there and say, well, customer told me something, then I took it, I absorbed into that project that we went on. We also want to know that yes, agile accept changes, but it's also meant to be a change management process. You want to understand the impact of that change on what you're working on. So by involving the development team and adjusting the sprint backlog, we successfully incorporated the new feature without causing major disruption, though we lost a bit of time. You see, here I try to communicate that yes, I'm not perfect, yeah. However, we're able to make the customer happy and we deliver an improved kind of a software. This is how you can show how real that you are. You don't have to put all the good foot forward all the time. Just a bit of, I could have done better here, but I didn't do better here. However, you have said that you are good enough, yeah, based on what you have put here. The second response here is, in the marketing campaign management project, which I was working on, stakeholders requested additional reporting features mid-project. You could imagine, started a project, made into that project, stakeholder says, no, I want this dashboard this way. I don't want it to be a pie chart. I want it to be a cumulative flow diagram, as an example. Then you say, by conducting a change impact assessment, you determine the changes aligned with the project goals and could be accommodated within the current timeline without compromising quality, because you have to assess the impact of that change and also manage your stakeholders very well, because if you don't do this, what's going to happen is that you just realize that every change is coming in, Before you know it, you take all the changes and your project will just go straight. It goes south. So you want to test how much you can do impact assessment of any change that any user or any stakeholder bring to you. So let's go straight to question number 8. Can you describe your experience with process modeling? This is a technical stuff, right? Some organizations, depending on the kind of BA role they are trying to hire you for, maybe they are hiring you for a change manager role or process improvement role, or as a process improvement analyst as an example, or they are trying to develop some software in that particular company with software development. They need somebody who has a good knowledge of developing models or building process map. So here they are trying to test you on that process map, and you need to use some technicalities here. For example, you could say, I use process modeling to create visual representation of workflows, aiding in understanding and analysis. That's what process flow really does to you. Oftentimes, this is used to explain design, and I use that as solution approaches to stakeholders. That means that I use my process map to also explain my solution approaches to my customer. I'm skilled in creating various process models. Example of that is you can process flow diagram, you can process swim lane diagram, you can also create BPMN, right, diagrams. This visual representation help you to analyze and also improve business processes. We use all these to find a way to explain what we are trying to do to our customers. Sometimes we use them to analyze our assist scenario, which is what we call the current scenario assist. Then we also use that to also redesign our to-be, which is now our future kind of state. We call it future state. That is the current state and the future state. Example of scenario responses you give to this is, in a supply chain project, I use process modeling to map the end-to-end procurement process. This diagram highlighted areas of redundancy and inefficiency. It allows us to streamline the process by automating manual steps, leading to a 15% reduction in processing time. You could see, very straight on point. Second example here is, I could say, in an healthcare project in which I worked on, I used process flow diagram to map the patient intake process from when the patient comes in to when the patient leaves the hospital. Then by identifying bottleneck and inefficiencies, you redesign the process to decrease waiting time of the patient and also to enhance the overall patient experience. You could see here that this gives you a good context and a good response to those kind of questions. The last 2 questions for this particular video. Now, what tools are you proficient in as a business analyst? This is an opportunity to sell yourself, to show your technical competence in terms of how grounded you are on you using some kind of tools. And there are many tools you can mention, but I put them in different groups. And it's not only for response purpose, it's also for you to study on those tools, to be sure that you know how to use those tools, at least at an intermediate level. So the answer you give to that is, I'm proficient in tools like Lucidchart, Microsoft Visio, and also Draw.io for process modeling. For me, I'm more heavy on Draw.io. You see, you're trying to say that you're an expert on Draw.io, but the other one, you could use them to a very good extent. So use Jira, Azure DevOps board, and Confluence for requirement management and for documentation. But I've been very much hands-on on Jira and Confluence. Yeah. So you use Excel and Google Sheets for data analysis, and I'm an expert, for example, on Excel. You see, I'm trying to point out where I'm very good. And I use collaboration tools like Slack, MS Teams for efficient communication, and I've used Power BI and Tableau. However, Tableau, I have some hands-on on Tableau, but on Power BI, I have very good hands on Power BI for data visualization and insight. You could give some example on where you have used that, and 2 examples to that is, you could say, in my previous role, I utilized Jira to create and manage user story. Right? It enabled the team to track progress and to ensure all requirements were addressed. I also use Confluence to maintain clear and up-to-date project documentation accessible to all team members. Very good kind of response. The second one is, in an healthcare analytics project which I worked on, I used Tableau to create interactive dashboard that displayed patient admission trend. By visualizing this data, hospital administrator gained insight into peak admission time, allowing them to allocate resources more efficiently. You can see that this is a very lovely one. Every response you have seen so far has a lot to do with the context, to the action that you have taken, and also to the result that you achieve. And the final question on this video. Yeah? You're excited, right? And I'm sure you're learning a lot of stuff here. Again, don't let me remind you for the last time. Click that bell, subscribe, and don't forget to drop a comment on which one resonates most with you. I actually want to hear from you so that I can show you more of this kind of video that is going to help you to grow your career. And the question here is, how do you handle resistance to change from stakeholders? Because it's not always interesting. It's not always like bed of roses where you just go and advocate for a change and every stakeholder is going to listen to you. How do you manage stakeholder? This one is testing your stakeholder management skill. Remember the 10 things I told you? Questions are always coming from those areas. That's why anytime a BA question come at you, you need to check which area am I being tested here. It could be one area, it could be two areas that overlap with each other. Spend your time to understand this very well. The answer here is address resistance by conducting change impact assessment and engaging stakeholder in the change management workshops. I clearly communicate the benefit of the proposed change. This is important. Communicating benefit of a change is one of the major areas for handling difficult stakeholders. Two major things. Number one is communicating the benefit to the stakeholders. The second one is communication. That is timely communication, giving enough information that stakeholder needs to make right decision. You address concerns and you involve the stakeholder in the decision-making process. Examples to that is, you could say in a CRM migration project, the sales representatives were hesitant about adopting the new interface. They felt like it was too complex for them. To alleviate their concerns, organize a training session, which is like your change workshop, where they could explore the new systems hands-on. So you put them to use, right, to show them the benefit of that system. Then you increase their familiarity with the system, which reduce their resistance and improve your adoption rate of the system. You don't have to say it was eliminated completely. You try to improve it. Right? You won't get it 100% all the time. This is how you are able to communicate. The second one is, in an ARP implementation project which I worked on, employees were very resistant to adopt a new reporting system. To address this, I organized training sessions showcasing how this new system will streamline their work. That means to make their life better and also improve data accuracy, which they have been struggling with before now. By involving them in the training, they became more receptive to the change. As you can see right here, you could see that there are lots of ways in which you could give answers to that. And going through these top 10 questions, you could see that this will be beneficial to you. Take your time to study them. You can go back and play them again and again. If you are going for an interview, it is going to help you a lot to prepare. And if you look at any of the answers and you don't have understanding of them, it means there's a place of knowledge gap in your BA work. Go study more, right? And if you want to be a business analyst and you don't know where to go, come to PeopleHam. We've got you. Go to our website, www.peopleham.io, and register. You can DM us, you can send us a message here and be right in your face. Join our Elite BA school. You're going to learn a lot. So watch out for part 2 of this, where I'll take the questions to the next level, because there are many questions that we have, and we have answers well prepared for all those questions and scenario. And these are the things that you don't really get in most places. You want to have access. This is the gift I have for you. If you want to have an access to this e-copy, you know what to do for me? Join our community. It's a community where we call ourselves Ace My Interview Community. It's a community where people that are looking to smash that job out there, they join. And we have frequent sessions where we do coaching for ourselves, teach you different things. There's a video actually that I did about the benefit of you joining this particular community. Until I see you again, guys, we meet at the top, because that's where I'm gonna be. My name is Olade Amos. I'm called The Strategist, because I'm here to take your life and business from here to where you wanna be. Okay? See at the top, because that's where I'm gonna be. Bye.